A slave in our Ghanaian tradition is a person who has been bought in cash or kind. That is the first definition. Second definition is that some slaves they are like war captives. When you went to war, you always brought some home to show that you have won. It is like some people call it a trophy. You have won the war. So the first thing is that they see the slaves coming, then they know that no, this war has been successful. Because many people are following them who are not people they know in their town or village. The kings are the ones who go to the war. So in the king's or chief's palaces, I use king to refer to somebody who has a lot of territory and they are under him. A chief will have territory, but not as much as a king. So in Ghana or in Africa, we always make a difference between a king who has a kingdom and a chief who has a chiefdom. They are not the same size and they don't all have the same power. So either way, they will wage a war. So we first of all look at the fact that they have been caught or taken as war captives. Those are when you get a lot of people coming into the kingdom or the chiefdom. So that is the number one. And then the other ones are in kind or in cash. In some of the work I did in the archives, I was surprised to realize that in some court cases or disputes, somebody will say, "Can you please keep quiet, you slave? When your ancestors came here, they were bought with bananas." So that is the kind. In other words, cash at that time was cowries. If you had the number of cowries, you could buy maybe a certain number of slaves per person. But if you didn't have cowries, you could also use bananas, foodstuffs, to exchange for the slave. So the war captives are number one. Then the cowries, shells are number two. And then sometimes, because you don't have cash, it can be foodstuffs. You're a big farmer. You have a lot of plantain. You can take them to the slave market and buy a slave. And in my work, I discovered there were over 60 slave markets in Ghana. So in my thesis and in my book, I have given pictures and I've even drawn a map on the slave routes in Ghana and also in terms of the markets that were available for you to go and buy a slave, depending on your need. If you needed a few, 3 or 4 people to help you domestically in your home, you can go and buy 3 or 4. If you didn't have cowries, if you're a farmer, you exchange it with foodstuffs. So this is our definition in Ghana of a slave. 3 definitions. First, because the person has been caught in war. Secondly, because you've bought it in cash or kind. And thirdly, sometimes also some people who have many slaves but cannot maintain them can give it as a gift to a family relative or a member of the family or a relative, distant, whatever, or even a friend. Sometimes, especially the men who are mostly predominant in the slavery and slave trade, sometimes they look at some of the slaves and there are some beautiful girls among them. So they actually select. In Africa, we are polygamous. You can marry as many as you can, so long as you have the money to take care of them. So they can decide, well, I have 3 wives. Let me add this one. Let me add this one. Before you can say, Jack, they've married about 6, 7 wives. And it's legitimate. There's nothing wrong with it in our tradition and many parts of Africa. So some of them even pick the beautiful girls just to marry them. That's all. The motive is that we want to add to the women we have, Mainly the other, because the people already in your town, you can't enslave them. It always have to come from somewhere. You usually don't enslave people in your own town where you need them, especially the chiefs and kings for farm work, for trading. In the areas where they had mines, gold mines, salt mines, you need labor. So sometimes the people in your own town use them for labor. But if you need more labor, you have to go outside your town or state. So that is where people would want to go to the slave market to purchase slaves. There were routes that went north all the way to Bondugu, way parts of Africa. There were also routes that went across from Nigeria, which was regarded as mainly from Hausa land, that crossed the coast. So from, let's say, Ivory Coast or even Senegal, all the way to Cameroon. There was also what we call the West African slave routes. There were several of them crisscrossing, but I talk about two main ones, which is easier in terms of the West African one, which will start from maybe Senegal, pass through the whole of West Africa up to Cameroon. Then there will be one which will pass through north. The north of Ghana will also go all the way to North Africa. And there were those who were crisscrossing, very big slave routes. It's another about 10 major ones, and crisscrossing another maybe 20 little ones. That's also a huge thing to study and learn, So there were routes people, and at every point of the routes, there were people who were guarding the routes and making sure that the traders who were coming or going had protection. And of course, you paid for it in kind. There was no money except for cowries. That was the form of exchange. Or else you may decide that, can you take these 3 captives for payment for whatever services you give to me? So that was the way it was done. I think the difference is that slavery is an act of making somebody a slave. So the institution whereby you get somebody and then the person is going to remain with you forever till the person died or the owner died and then decided that in Africa, when a person dies, there's a way in which they share their property. So the elders will assemble and say, well, we have about 100 slaves. How do we share these slaves? So they look amongst themselves and then, give everybody some. Then there's also the idea that you yourself went and bought the slave. So it's your personal property. So in that case, some people make a will in terms of oral. We couldn't write those days, but they always had oral tradition, whereby they will assemble members of the family and say, when I die, this is what I want to be done. So it passes on from generation to generation. Now the chattel slavery is, you don't find much of it in Africa. In chattel, it means that, excuse me to say, you treat a person like a horse or a mule or a donkey. So the person is really not a human being when it's chattel. Use him however you like. Do whatever we want with him. But in Africa, there was a difference. In Africa, we have the tradition of making people members of our family. Sometimes somebody will go for trading, and on the way, the person realizes that there is danger. There are people who are way late to catch them and sell them. So they'll go back and say, I want to stay here till the roads are clear. Sometimes the roads never clear. So they stay there, and there are traditions that they do, pour a drink, do this, and swear to the ancestors that this person wants to be part of our family. That is also there. But there are those who feel they are bold enough, they are going down to the coast to sell, maybe exchange coca-cola nuts for European products or exchange salts. And then those who are wheeled on the way can catch the slaves. They may not call them slaves, but they catch the people and in the end send them into slavery. So there wasn't one method, there were several, depending on the state you were in, depending on the circumstances, And I happened to be an Asante. And from the research I did, both written records and also oral tradition, I found that Asante was the greatest slave-owning state in Ghana because they went to a lot of war. There are so many war captives. So what do you do with them? So you always look at your state need. How many do we need for farming? How many do we need for housework? You look at all that, and the rest you send to the coast to be sold. So you can't use one definition or one way. It was like they had several ways of buying slaves and several ways of also disposing of them. When I was doing this research, at a point my mother told me, if you bring that case from our hometown, I won't sit here and listen. And my father said, but it went to court. So my father said, my father is an academician as well, music and so on. He said, you know what, I have a lot of drum music. You can use some of this in your work. I have horn music, I have drum music. And they talk in proverbs. So unless you study the people and say, why are you saying this? Because in one of the drum language he gave to me, he said, you play the drum and say, I was bought from Salaga. The chief brought me from Salaga for maybe 2,000 kola nuts. And then you ask, why are you playing this in the chief's palace? Well, I'm playing what the chief has directed me to do. So they also have a smart way of covering their owners and their lords and land because they are taking good care of them. That is it. So my father recorded a lot of horn music that had to do with slavery. So I went to him and said, Daddy, can you explain this? And he gave me a lot in my book. And he even wrote the foreword to my book. And he said it's not because of the blood relationship that he's writing the foreword, but because he also has done a lot of research on slavery within Ghana and has realized that some of the songs they are singing has to do with let the slave sleep. So he notices, he records it, but plays the horn or the drum. I was brought from the north. I was brought from the Otomisrim. Nanaso Tomisrim in Pensa. My father translated, he brought me from the north. The chief brought me from the north for 3,000 kolanas. So he gave me a lot of music things to share, which I did in my book and some of my thesis. In some of my interviews, and I said I'm going to write a second book, I've written the dates of the interview. I've left out the names. But sometimes at the end of the book, like my first book, I wrote respondents. So those who don't mind that I put them at the end of the book, you'll find their names. I indicate who they are, their chiefs, their linguists, or I indicate that a linguist in the Asante Ines court, or a linguist in Asante Mampong court. Because some of them actually warned me that if I'm going to tell people who they were, their ancestry was, I'll be in big trouble. Because my name is on the book, your name is on the work. They have children, grandchildren at Legon University where you teach, they can find you out easily. So I've had to say some who are willing to share will do. But at every point, whether you are talking to a Ga or Ewe or a Dangme or a Asante or anywhere in the north, everywhere, and I've been to everywhere in the north, because I usually take a letter from the university to cover me and indicate that we are doing academic work. This is not for fault finding or, and then as soon as they realize that the university stamp is on it with a letter from the top of the hill, in other words, our registry, they give me audience. And but what they don't like is to tape it. Anytime we want to bring a tape so that some of the songs they are singing want to tape, they'll say, no, we don't like the tape. Then I'll say, why? That one you are quoting me, and I may be caught for something. So we can't erase history. I think that is how I ended. History cannot be erased. And for the African who still is interested in oral tradition, because not all people go to school, but they are in the court. They are serving the queen, they are serving the king, they are serving the chief. It means that you, first of all, you swear that when you come to work in the palace, you are not going to leak things out. And then you even swear to the extent that if they leak things out, I should be finished. So they swear an oath, all of those who are working in the palace. So until they unswear it, they can't tell me secrets. But a few of them, I went to the Asante court, and a few of them realized that the Asante was giving me audience, and so some of them, Asante said they should give me audience and let me record or write, and many of them agreed. So I got a lot of my information, let's say about 70%, from Menchia, the Asante court, which is the head of all the other kingdoms, because the Asante knew my father. The Asante at that time was a lawyer, and he was also there. So as soon as I mentioned my father's name, he said, Kwabena Ketie's daughter. No problem. You are a lecturer? I said, yes. You are in the university teaching? No problem. We don't mind. We don't want those who will come and just dig our past or, So that is how So I don't think it will stop, because oral tradition can't stop in Africa and in Ghana.